Here's the real deal. Your everyday, routine habits actually reveal way more about your cognitive abilities than any standardized test ever could. But it's not just a reflection of who you are. These daily behaviors literally train your brain over time. They are actively rewiring your mental effectiveness, for better or worse, based on exactly what you do day in and day out.
So, welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are breaking down 14 everyday habits that completely dictate our cognitive potential. We're going to explore the exact patterns that are either building up a razor-sharp mind or quietly, secretly tearing down your focus and decision-making without you even realizing it.
Okay, let's dive right in. Here's our roadmap. We've organized these 14 behaviors into 4 main psychological buckets. First, the distracted brain. Second, traps of the ego. Third, flawed logic and rigidity. And finally, neglecting mental maintenance.
Let's hit category number 1, the distracted brain, which is all about avoiding quiet and chasing those quick rewards.
I want you to think about how you handle silence in our hyper-connected world. Like, does it actually feel relaxing, or, honestly, does it make you a little restless? There are 3 distinct habits that make up this distracted brain: avoiding quiet moments entirely, endless content consumption, and chasing instant rewards. Modern life basically begs us to seek quick dopamine hits, right? Always scrolling, always looking for the next piece of entertainment.
And the contrast here is huge. Think about the habit of needing constant noise, always having music or a podcast playing in the background. It's often a subconscious way to just avoid your own thoughts, and it actually prevents deeper thinking. But on the flip side, highly intelligent minds actively leverage solitude. They use those quiet moments to reflect, to really chew on problems rather than just running away from them.
It really boils down to this. Constant, dopamine-driven entertainment reduces your attention span and makes focus work so much harder. Watching videos isn't bad on its own, obviously, but when it totally replaces thinking or creating, it takes a massive toll. Consistently choosing immediate gratification literally weakens your self-control. As the research brilliantly points out, learning begins with humility. I love this because it perfectly captures how our own ego and pride can act as a massive roadblock. It severely limits our ability to absorb new information and actually adapt to it.
Which leads us perfectly into category number 2, traps of the ego. Specifically, false expertise and poor listening.
You have absolutely experienced the Dunning-Kruger effect, even if you didn't know the formal name for it. This is when people with very little knowledge wildly overestimate their abilities, confidently explaining subjects they barely understand. We've all seen it, right? The loudest voice in the room acting like the ultimate expert. But truly intelligent individuals, they're totally comfortable just saying, you know what? I don't know.
And this whole ego trap bleeds right into our conversations. Consider the poor listener, that person who interrupts constantly, or is really just waiting for their turn to speak because they assume they already have all the answers. Compare that to active listening, which actually requires real mental effort. Intelligent people know they can learn from anyone, so they listen to understand, not just to fire back a reply.
Actually, scratch that. It's worse than just not listening. If you aren't listening, you're probably falling into the trap of instant dismissal. Instantly saying, "Oh, that's ridiculous," or "No way that'll work." Well, that's not critical thinking. It's just intellectual laziness. Smart people take the time to critically evaluate a brand new concept before they pass judgment.
So I want to pose a question to you. Do you trust logic or do you trust luck? It's absolutely crucial because how you answer that determines how you process evidence, how you view reality, and ultimately, how sharp your reasoning skills actually are. That brings us to category number 3, flawed logic and rigidity, or basically how we fool ourselves on a daily basis.
A massive culprit here is magical thinking. This is the tendency to mistake coincidence for cause and effect. Think about the sports fan who insists they absolutely have to wear their unwashed lucky socks for their team to win. They're taking totally random events and treating them like solid facts. Less analytical minds do this all the time, building unshakable beliefs out of pure coincidence.
Then there's the trap of herd behavior. This happens when people change their opinions or even their entire personality just to follow a new trend, completely abandoning independent thought. Contrast that with highly critical thinkers. They will actually stop and ask themselves if something genuinely aligns with their own values before just blindly joining the crowd.
So, just to quickly recap, the 5 core habits of flawed logic are magical thinking, following directions blindly even when they're obviously failing, accepting extraordinary claims without any real proof, refusing to adapt, and herd behavior. Whether you're stubbornly sticking to a failing plan just because those are the rules, or completely rejecting the unfamiliar, this kind of mental rigidity traps you. Literally traps you.
It's wild how differently people process information. Someone with rigid logic accepts the very first convincing story they hear. Simple, dramatic explanations, like elaborate conspiracy theories, they're incredibly appealing because they require zero mental heavy lifting. But the critical thinker? They act like a detective, demanding verifiable evidence. True intelligence relies on proof, not just excitement.
Always remember this fundamental rule. Growth comes from adaptation, not repetition. You can go through the motions for years, but that experience means absolutely nothing if you never stop to reflect on what went wrong. Repeating the exact same mistakes without improving isn't growth. Intelligent people study their failures, and they adapt.
And finally, we've reached category number 4, neglecting mental maintenance, failing to repair and grow.
Let's talk about the biological reality for a second. We see severe, measurable drops in memory, focus, and judgment, all caused directly by sleep deprivation. So many people proudly claim they can function on just a few hours of sleep, like it's some sort of flex. But sacrificing sleep isn't a badge of honor. It is a direct biological attack on your brain's performance. Smart people fiercely protect their sleep.
But maintenance isn't just physical, right? It's also social. Psychology identifies a trait called a low need for cognition. Basically, it's a lower desire for deep thinking. You probably know someone who talks endlessly but never really says anything meaningful, sticking strictly to the weather or workplace gossip. Curious minds, on the other hand, actively seek out discussions that challenge their ideas. They exercise their brain rather than just filling the room with empty noise.
Ultimately, the big takeaway here is incredibly empowering. Intelligence is shaped daily. It is not entirely determined by your genetics or some old high school test score. Recognizing and breaking destructive patterns, whether that's poor sleep, endless scrolling, or intellectual laziness, that's the real secret. When you replace those with better habits, your focus in your decision-making will absolutely transform.
So, I'll leave you with this. Which habit will you change today to build a sharper mind? Will you embrace a little more quiet? Maybe prioritize your sleep, or start questioning the trends you blindly follow? It's time to take control of your cognitive potential. And hey, if you're serious about building a sharper mind, make sure to subscribe to this Explainer series. We dive into powerful insights just like these every single week. Thanks for hanging out with me.